Hey everyone, this is Major Batman here at Linkura Studios, here to do kind of a post-mortem on a game jam that I recently participated in. We submitted a game called Ghoul Gambit to the VR Game Jam 2022 on itch.io, hosted by some of probably your favorite YouTubers, Justin Barnett, Valem VR, and VR with Andrew. I've been a Patreon of both Valem and VR with Andrew. So the theme of it was one-time use. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the process and kind of what we did and some of the issues we ran into and what we liked about doing this game jam. So our core mechanic was taking these books that were spawning and killing ghouls as they tackled your tavern. So let's talk a little bit about the process and like what we ended up coming up with. I partnered up with one of my friends, Timps from gamedev Bits, as well as Duckling, who helped support us, and he's from Balmoroth. So when we first got the idea of one-time use, so our first thought was perhaps to make it something like using Polygon Apocalypse, where we utilize all these different modular pieces and you get a one-time use, one fire weapon to attack the ghoul, attack some sort of monster. I have a previous game I was working on called Rampart Rampage, where it was more magical. The idea is you had staffs. So we thought, maybe what if we turned it into wands? So I found some cool wands on ArtStation that I thought might work. Duckling came by and said that it would probably be very non-performant. We might have to do a little bit of decimation to get them to work well in a VR environment. We weren't playtesting it just yet, but we had this general idea of having a tavern or a library that we would use and we would defend from. Kind of a mini tower defense. And so we kind of took that, not to its extremes, but we started playing with the idea of, will wands work? And we kind of came up with that it probably wouldn't work well, because once you kill a ghoul or a zombie or whatever it is, you'll run into an issue where you then need the next one, right? The one-time use. The theme kind of constrained us a bit. But we liked the idea of it being magical, and we liked the idea that it was kind of this library book thing. So with Timps and I, we came up with this idea that what if on explosion, so we sort of had this idea of like, what if we created a particle effect where when you hit stuff, papers flew out. And so I took this little particle system, and then I found out where the renderer was, and you can just change the mesh that populates. So I went around and I found what I was looking for, and you just bring it over, and then now you have papers popping out. So this kind of got this, oh wow, that's pretty cool. What if we just threw the books in the first place? And we started playing with ideas like, oh, we could randomly generate titles to these different books. So the idea was that we could create these random book titles with a prefix and a suffix and kind of like a middle like adjective nature with it, and create kind of one-time, one-off books that were unique. And then each one, depending upon the color or the size, would give you a different type of spell. And so that kind of solidified our game for us. So Tim's had access to this fantastic interior pack that he was utilizing, which I thought was pretty cool and kind of helped flesh it out. We want to use perhaps a little more stylized environment, which I think worked well for us. I think one of our highlights to the game was it looked nice. And so we utilized this fantastic interior pack by Tidal Flask Studios. And then for me, I looked through what type of characters I had and access to, and I found this ghoul crew. And I believe I got it on sale a while back, and it really worked out well. It gave me some variety of 5 different characters, which kind of indicated that maybe they each do something different. Different movements, different attack distance, different speeds. And so that's what we worked on. We used the Ghoul crew hand painted by BitGem. Initially, when we created this game, we had kind of this like, we were really high up, and the idea was you had to throw it over, and you just spent a little bit too much time looking down. So we lowered the platform a bit, so you're a bit more into it. And the idea was that the ghouls would try and attack your base while the bookshelves were spawning behind you. So I did end up posting a Reddit post about some of the troubles and difficulties I ran into. So I'm going to go over a few of them now, and we could talk about them. One of the first things I ran into was like when setting it up, was I utilized a little bit of a later version, 2021.3.7, and I was running into some issues with getting it all to connect. And what I ended up having to do was just updating XR Interaction Toolkit, and that package helped. But as always, when you're dealing with VR, it runs into some issues. Further along, when we deployed, because I had the Oculus checked, it wasn't working for like the HTC Vive and the Valve Index. So I swapped it to OpenXR and re-uploaded another copy, and that build ended up working for a lot of other folks, but not everyone. And I do think that perhaps impacted us, was we weren't perfect on every system. Another thing we did was we were trying to keep track of kills, and it's not hard to do. We increased our death count, kills equals +1, plus equals 1, right? But what was happening was it just kept colliding. Like you hit them with a book and it hits their head like 5 times, and so you were getting like 5 kills for 1. So we ended up solving that by adding an eye enumerator for multiple collision mitigation, which basically got called, and then we increase the death count, and then we do this pause for a second. So the idea is like you can't kill more than a ghoul a second. And so it just waits a second, and by that time the death animation already plays out. The collision box is then gone as they're dead, and so if you did throw 2, it didn't quite matter. Another issue we had, so the bookshelf was, once, because of the way we have the colliders and the explosions working, we wanted to basically collide with anything except the bookshelf and kind of our player area. So the way we did this was we just created a layer that said don't blow up. And that layer up here, don't blow up, allowed us to look between throwable and don't blow up, and the idea being it didn't blow up on first load. And so that was helpful. We did run into an issue where one of the first things I did was I went into project settings and physics, and I disconnected throwable and don't blow up. And what that ended up happening was it just fell through the world space, and the books didn't load. So that was one thing I had to work around. Another issue we ran into, which you can see in the video, is the explosion should probably kill some of these folks, but you really have to actually just hit them with the book. That wasn't quite solved, and something I'm still working on that I'll work on in the long run. So if we open the spell, so let's say Arcane Explosion, what I believe it was this collision. By enabling that, it enables collisions to be triggered, and then we also threw this sphere collider on there. So we're trying to hit it both ways, and it just never quite worked out for what I really intended it to be, right? So you'd get, the idea being you'd get bigger books, and the bigger books would allow you to kill more ghouls at the same time. And then the last issue we kind of had was those build issues, which I alluded to earlier, was when I was using a slightly older version, and so when I tried to go build it, I wasn't able to build it on Android. And so I had to go through a lot of issues just trying to get it to work on Android. And what ended up happening was so one issue I ran into in these builds was, this is my APK side-loaded onto the Oculus Quest, and if I look towards the bookshelf, it works fine. But as soon as I turned my head towards the game space, it went black. And you can see a few lights, like the candles and the windows and the UI, but for whatever reason, everything else was black. So that's something I'd have to solve, and so I never really got the APK fully working, which was an issue as well. Altogether, I had a lot of fun. It was a great experience. There were so many excellent competitions, and so beyond just creating a cool game, I was able to create a video, right? You saw the trailer that we did, create some screenshots. We got to create a little logo and page. So this was kind of neat. It was one of my first times using Itch, so to put it all together, that we're utilizing, which was fun in its own kind of cool way. And then at the end of the game jam, you get to play all these extra games. I mean, people made some awesome ones here. Some of my favorites include this viral load, as well as this punch. This punch 'em all was probably my favorite, and no surprise, it won #1 in all categories. I very quickly, it was just were just super well done. A lot of fun to play. But yeah, so that's my postmortem for this. I hope you enjoyed this kind of thought process and walkthrough of this VR game jam that I participated in. And if you have questions, please feel free to post them. I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. And if not, have a great day.